Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name is Trevor Leahy, and I work for the Office of Small Business Assistance, which is part of the Secretary of State's office. Today, I'm going to be talking about the options and steps involved in changing an assumed business name into a limited liability company. To start off, I want to talk about some definitions really quickly. Assumed business names are one of the most basic things someone can register with the Oregon Secretary of State. You've probably heard the term DBA or doing business as, or even fictitious business name. Those are all pretty much the same thing as an assumed business name. If a single person is operating their business under an assumed business name, they'd be considered a sole proprietor, whereas two or more individuals operating a business under an assumed business name would not be considered sole, they'd be considered a partnership. There's no upper limit to how many partners you can have under an assumed business name, but the more partners you have, the more complicated things can get. Assumed business names cost $50 to register and then cost $50 to renew every other year from the date you register the name with us at the Secretary of State. There's a little distinction to be made here in that an assumed business name is not a business entity. It's an alias or a name tag that you and your partners have, and you and your partners are the business. The assumed business name is not. It's only the label. Limited liability companies are commonly known as LLCs, and they are the most common entity type registered in Oregon. Unlike the assumed business name I just spoke about, LLCs are an entity and can have one or more members. Every LLC must have at least one member because for LLCs, members are considered the owners. LLCs cost $100 to register and are subject to renewal every year for another $100. The thing about LLCs is, since they are an entity type, Oregon law requires the LLC indicator to be present at the end of the business name. If you register an LLC, you must start marketing your business as being an LLC on all correspondence, accounts, documents, and more. Think of it as the last name of the business. There are lots of instances where the owner of an assumed business name decides they want to evolve their business into an LLC. This is completely normal and can be a sign of positive growth for the company. The hangup and reason some people get confused is highlighted in yellow here. If an assumed business name already exists, the Secretary of State won't allow anyone else to register a business name that is too similar to the one already on record, even if such new registration is being submitted by the owner of an assumed business name. It would still prevent the new registration. The reason for that is it prevents confusion and makes sure business names are distinguishable on our records, which are public, from one another. Since an assumed business name prevents a new LLC with the same name, there are two main options I'm going to go over on the next few slides. One option is not any better or any worse than the other. It's purely a matter of how you, as a business owner, reach a decision point about how you want to proceed. So option one involves the assumed business name being canceled, clearing the way for the new LLC with the same name to be registered. Step one in this option is sending us the assumed business name cancellation form. Once we process that, the name becomes up for grabs and a new LLC registration can be submitted without any conflict. There isn't a single form to do all of this, and I'll talk about the forms that you would need for option one on the next slide. Normally, canceling an assumed business name costs $50, but if we receive the cancellation form and the new LLC registration at or around the same time, we waive the cancellation fee and only charge the $100 LLC registration fee. The forms needed for option one are really threefold. At a minimum, there's one form you would need to get to the corporation division for option one. That's the assumed business name cancellation form. It's available on the Secretary of State forms page. There's no online way to cancel an assumed business name, and we do not accept forms via email. Forms must be mailed or faxed to us. The new LLC registration, also known as the Articles of Organization, has a paper form you can submit along with the assumed business name cancellation form, but you can register the LLC online, fax the assumed business name cancellation form to us, and it speeds up the process a little bit. If you plan to fax the forms to us, you'll still need to arrange payment of the LLC registration. To do that, you'll need to include the credit card fax cover sheet, which will allow you to provide us payment information via fax. The link to each of these forms will be in the description once this video is posted online. To recap option one, we need the assumed business name cancellation form. We need the new LLC registration, and the whole thing costs $100. The second option involves keeping the existing assumed business name and changing who owns that assumed business name. A lot of time, assumed business names are owned by individuals, but they can be owned by an LLC instead of an individual, which is also completely normal. Many times this option is chosen because the cost of rebranding everything a company has to reflect the LLC designation is greater than the cost of maintaining both the LLC registration and the assumed business name registration. Having both allows the LLC to do business under the existing assumed business name. For this option, there's no need to cancel the assumed business name, but just change ownership. Like option one, this involves sending the corporation division a specific form called the Assumed Business Name Amendment Form. This form allows you to update the address and owner for your assumed business name, and there's no charge for doing so as long as you aren't changing the name of the business. Sending in this form in tandem with a new LLC registration or after submitting a new LLC registration online and changing the owner of the assumed business name to the new LLC tells us the story of what you want to do. Since there's no cost in changing the assumed business name owner, option two costs $100, although this option does result in the cost of maintaining both registrations. Therefore, it's $100 per year for the LLC and the $50 every other year for the assumed business name. Like option one, all the paperwork can be submitted via fax or mail, or the LLC can be registered online. If you register the LLC online, you'll initially be told that the name is not available. The registration will go into suspense and eventually be rejected outright unless we receive the amendment or cancellation form I talked about in option one. For option two, there is a single form that you have to get to the corporation division either by mail or fax, and that's the Assumed Business Name Amendment Form available on the Secretary of State Forms page. There's no online way to amend an assumed business name, and we do not accept forms via email. The new LLC registration, which is also known as the Articles of Organization, has a paper form you can submit along with the assumed business name cancellation form, but you can register the LLC online and fax the assumed business name amendment to us to speed up the process. If you plan to fax all the forms to us, you will still need to include our credit card fax cover sheet, which allows you to provide us payment information via fax. The link to each of those forms will be in the description once this video is posted online. And to recap option 2, we need the assumed business name amendment form, we need the new LLC registration, and it costs $100 for option 2. Here are the links to each of the forms you'll need, as well as the link to our main forms page. I realize that if you are watching this video on our YouTube channel, these are not clickable, which is why we are including these links in the description below. The corporation division organizes forms by registration type, so all the assumed business name forms are together, and all the LLC forms are together. The credit card fax cover sheet doesn't apply to a single type of registration, so it's in a separate section of our forms area. I want to reiterate at this time, please do not email forms to the Secretary of State. We can't process emailed forms, and we won't even open attachments for IT security reasons. Furthermore, if you were to fill out the credit card fax cover sheet and email it to us, your credit card information just became subject to public records disclosure. As a rule, I would not recommend ever emailing confidential information unless there's an airtight method of doing so and you've already discussed sending such information to the receiving agency. Either of the options I've talked about in this presentation will take about 5 to 7 business days to process. That's once we receive the forms. So if you're mailing forms to us, it might take a little bit longer because of mail time. The reason for that is we process items in the order they're received. The best way to verify whether the changes have been made to your registration is to look up your business using the Secretary of State's business name search, typing in your business name and seeing if the changes you've requested have been processed. If you have questions, you can call the corporation division, who are the people filing and processing the changes. They're at 503-986-2200. Right now, you'll likely experience longer hold times than normal if you want to speak to someone by phone. I'd recommend sending an email with questions to corporationdivision.sos@oregon.gov. Emails continue to be responded to in real time, and you're more likely to get a detailed email response in less time than you would think. If you want to reach me or my team or have questions about this presentation, here's how you do so. You can call us at 844-469-5512. You can email us at business.sos@oregon.gov. We also have the Get Help button shown here. It's on many agency websites, and it's a direct line of communication to our office. And our website is oregon.gov/small business. With that, I thank you for your time and attention and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.